creativity is the ability to solve complex, open-ended problems, right? And so, like, let's start with artists, like an artist, right? Like a blank canvas is a complex, open-ended problem, right? Like it could literally be anything, and the artist's job is to solve that problem.
I'm lucky enough that I get to work with a wide variety of companies. Some of them are building software for helicopters, others are building space habitats. But the one thing they all have in common is that they are trying to solve really big and complicated problems. Our guest today is Andrew Barry, the founder and CEO of Curious Lion, a high potential talent studio developing top 10% talent. He is also the host of the Learning Culture podcast and an insatiably curious person himself. So that is going to be the focus of our discussion today: curiosity. In today's episode, you can expect to learn a really practical definition of what curiosity is and why it is essential for solving big, complicated problems, how an organizational culture can get in the way of curiosity, and what you can do as a manager to encourage creativity on your own team. Before we get into the discussion, I do want to remind you that if this is your first time listening to the show, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a future episode. And if you happen to be a person who is responsible for developing leaders in your organization, then I would love to talk to you. Please reach out to me at matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can see what we can do to build better leaders in your company. With that, let's get into the discussion with Andrew Barry. Andrew, welcome to the Leadership Launchpad. How are you doing today?
Oh, Matt, I'm so good, man. I have been really looking forward to this conversation.
I have been too. We got to meet in person for the first time at the Transform conference recently. I thought we had an
Yeah,
excellent conversation, and then I've seen
yeah.
you posting. You talk about a lot of stuff, but one of the things you've been posting a lot about recently is creativity.
Mm,
And I think I was just really excited to get into this
mm,
discussion with you because I work in a space. I work with a lot of engineers, right?
mm,
And I think a lot of times when you think of the word creativity, you maybe don't think of it in an engineering sense, but it has a lot of applicability. For
mhm.
you, when you talk about creativity, what do you mean by that word?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is such an important topic, and I realize the importance of it in my own business. Like, first and foremost, trying to find ways to express my creativity, and then realizing that it's not just artistic or musical or whatever, like you say. My life as an entrepreneur is creative, right? And so I went down this rabbit hole. Like, what is creativity actually? What are we talking
Yeah,
about here?
yeah,
And I've been influenced by two people I want to specifically call out. One is I don't know, I'm kind of butcher saying this, but Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He
yes,
wrote Flow, right? He did all that
yes,
research in Flow. He's also got this another amazing research-based book called Creativity, and he interviewed like 90 highly creative individuals across domains and synthesized sort of what makes them creative. And the other person is Angus Fletcher, who is a professor at Ohio State University in their project narrative team, and a friend of mine as well. And I've got to know him really well, and he has a really interesting take on it. And I'll start with him to answer your question. I think
excellent.
this is the best framing I've ever heard for it. Creativity is the ability to solve complex, open-ended problems, right? And so, like, let's start with artists, like an artist, right? Like a blank canvas is a complex, open-ended problem, right? Like it could literally be anything, and the artist's job is to solve that problem, to realize some kind of vision that they have, right, that they want to capture on canvas. And so it applies in those kind of settings, but then it's also way broader than that, right? And when you think about, like, again, go back to like running a business, this, like that's literally what we do every day, is solve
Yeah,
complex open-ended problems. And it's worth defining that as well, right? A complex open-ended problem is something that doesn't have a clear right answer, right? You get very straightforward routine answers, and that's a known, it's got known inputs, known outputs, like there's a way to solve it. But complex open-ended problems, those are the really tough, big, hairy ones that we grapple with all the time.
yeah.
And it's the ability to solve those. And I think that's ultimately, to me, what creativity is.
Have you ever heard of the concept of kind versus wicked learning environments?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's very related, right?
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind,
Yeah.
and is this idea of the for anybody who hasn't heard of it, a kind learning environment is something where the rules are well defined. There's lots of
Yes.
repeatability. So any kind of a basketball game, any kind of sport is
Yep.
generally a kind learning environment. Where a wicked learning environment, there's not a lot of repeatability. There's not a lot of known or written rules, and so something like leadership is a
Mhm.
wicked learning environment in that
Yes.
you're dealing with so many people, there's so many variables, it's really hard to create those situations to learn something quickly. And so
Yeah.
kind of relating this back to creativity, it sounds like a similar thing where there's I can almost imagine a world where there's certain processes that are best for places where everything's kind of known
Yeah.
versus where there's much more unknown. Is that what you generally see when you're
Yeah.
working with businesses?
Totally. And I'm gonna find this thing now. I've been playing around with this idea because I think it's I think the nature of the problem that we're working on is really important, right? And so if
Mm,
you have these open-ended problems, you have these closed-ended. So that's if you imagine a two by two matrix, right? So you've got open-ended and closed-ended, and then on the other side you've got reactive and proactive.
mm,
Okay, so on the close-ended side, like this is like these are the routine things, right? And the reactive, it's like something happens, follow the instructions, fix it. Okay, like
yeah,
that. On the proactive side for close-ended, it's like keeping the lights on stuff, right? Like maintenance type things.
yeah,
Okay, so those are like known things. Pretty like entry level managers get given those kind of things, get them done. And I think if you want to bring AI into the conversation, those are the first things that AI will be given and already are being given. When you go to the open-ended side and you look at this like reactive proactive thing, you've got your reactive problem in the open-ended is like Houston, we have a problem, right? Like
yeah.
a big
PR
deal.
crisis, like,
Exactly.
yeah,
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 like someone's like some a top performer's leaving, and like there's human dynamics involved. And then on the proactive side of that is like opportunities, right? These are like we want to break new ground, innovate, and I think that's a
mm,
lot about we're going to talk about. And that's where if you're a manager or a leader out there, like those are the kind of problems you want to get good at solving because of what we've just said. It's like it's a wicked problem.
yeah,
Chess is a good example of this. AI is really good at chess because chess is a closed
yes,
system.
yes,
Defined rules, like defined moves, all of that kind of stuff. And so don't worry about being good at kind environments and kind
yes,
systems because AI
yeah,
is going to do that for you, right?
yes,
Creativity is going to help you in wicked environments.
yeah. It makes sense how. So one of the things that I kind of sent you over in the prep for this call is, relating kind of to the world that I've always lived in of aerospace. I
Yeah.
always find it interesting how all of the biggest players, whether that's NASA or in the public sector or in the private sector, Boeing, Lockheed, these companies got to where they are by being creative, by operating in those wicked
Yeah.
environments, by looking forward, seeing where the opportunity is and going and solving it.
Yeah.
And now those same players are the ones that aren't getting anything done or like having lots of problems
Yeah.
because I think it's natural that as an organization grows and is successful, more and more things shift over into that known area and there's almost like more real estate to defend or more
Yeah.
work. Like have you noticed that shift? I guess the question that I'm kind of trying to get at is as an organization either grows or sees success,
Yeah.
what are some of the barriers that you see pop up that
Yeah.
make it difficult for people to be creative?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. So what you described is like the innovator's dilemma, right? Like you
Yeah.
break new ground and then you create this beachhead, this defense, this position that you have to defend, and
Yeah.
that's kind of like this incumbents problem. So now, and so and we talked a little bit about this off air, but like what got you there is you tend to like over index on because it's like
Yeah.
it's what got us here. Like this is so but it's what we're talking about, and I think what most people realize, even the incumbents, right? Like it's still there, but it's really hard to do. it's that kind of thinking is not going to get you where you need to go. So you need
Yeah.
to have this healthy creativity or innovation. So so to answer your question, I think like how is it? Wait, actually, can you just reframe or rephrase the question again?
Yeah, what are the things regarding that innovator's dilemma? Like, there's obviously this thing that's in the air that, it is, there's more to defend, there's more things, but like,
Yeah.
I think as that happens, often organizations probably create barriers that make it hard to be
Yes.
creative. They
Yes.
put
Yes.
processes in place. Like what are some examples of that
Yeah.
you've seen?
Yeah. So I love this question so much. I went and like did a little bit of thinking before this, and there's tons of examples, but I think they can be kind of grouped into four main things. And
Awesome.
to me, so creativity thrives on four things, and then it's going to be the avoidance of these things or like the lack of these things that stifle it, right? But these four things are freedom, trust, time, and discomfort or like messiness. Okay, so let's just like break down each of those things. So creativity thrives on freedom, the ability to like notice something and run an experiment and see like does that work? Does that make an impact? Learn from that, change something. That kind of freedom in a company that has had major success and really has like huge management hierarchies in place and stuff doesn't really exist, right? I think anybody who works,
Yeah.
I've worked at a company like that. Like it's not it's like having to run like a marketing campaign and you need like six approvals to go be able to run it, and then like that ship has sailed, kind of thing. So that's that whole one. Trust is a huge one. I know you talk about psychological safety a lot. That's that, right? It's like it's that fear of failure, right? The absence of trust is that fear of failure. Like, oh, I can't, like I think this could work, but I'm not going to try because like what if I lose my job, or what if I look bad, or whatever, right? So the lack of trust and that sort of that culture of like it's okay to try something, it's okay to get it wrong and learn from it, blah blah blah. So that's trust. Time is like almost all companies, and I mean we're the same as well, we all prioritize efficiency and
Yep.
speed and stuff. So that doesn't really
Mm,
allow for creative thinking, right? I'm sure you feel the same. Like I'm at my best, I come up with my best ideas if I'm like on a long walk, or if
yeah.
I go for a run, or like I've seen you post from like that awesome space you have, like that nature like around you there, and
Yeah.
that's where like those ideas come from, right? And when you don't have time and you like constantly focus on efficiency and speed, like you're just not going to get around to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last one was discomfort and messiness, and I think this is also one of the common misnomers of creativity. Is when we see a creative piece of work, a new album comes out, or an NFT drops, or whatever, like people look at it and go, oh wow, that's so creative, like that's amazing. But what they don't see are the thousand iterations that happen
Yeah.
before that, right? Creativity is a really messy process. And Csikszentmihalyi it shows this in his book when he interviews these 90 people. Like none of them, they don't, ideas don't come out fully baked. Like they come out like kind of ugly ducklings, and then you test them and validate them with other people and in the real world, and then you shape them and iterate them, and then eventually that album gets recorded and cut and perfectly packaged. And and so yeah, if you don't have the freedom, if you don't have the trust from the people around you, if you don't have the time, and you don't want to go through the messiness, you're not going to be creative.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you. I talk about him a lot. Have you ever listened to anything by Mark Randolph? He was the first CEO of Netflix.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar though.
Yeah, he's. I'm really happy that he stumbled upon my feed a couple years ago because I had never even know because he kind of moved out of any kind of leadership role at Netflix very early on before Netflix kind of got on anybody's radar. But one of the things that he talks about a lot when when we're trying to do brainstorming or something creative, often what'll happen is people will use the phrase, "There's no such thing as a bad idea," and they just like let's share it all.
Yeah,
And Mark flips that and he says like, "No, every idea is a bad idea. Like
bingo.
they're all bad. The
Yeah,
question is, why are they bad? What makes them bad?
yeah,
How do we change it to make it good?" And
yeah,
it's that iterative creative cycle
yeah,
that allows a bad idea to become a good idea. And I know
Yeah.
for me personally, it's one of the it's actually in like the instructional design part of my role when I'm working with organizations to,
Mm,
make courses or something, or make something better. I find that one of the largest stumbling blocks is getting that original source material to iterate
mm,
off of, because often the subject matter expert or the client, or whoever, whatever role they're in, they want to spend a bunch of time making that like presentable before they will
mm.
give it to me. And I
Yeah.
have to push them of just kind of like, no, 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 we're starting, like, this is the beginning.
Yeah.
I want it to look bad. You don't need,
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
we get started.
Yeah. That's a barrier right there. That, like, that's what, that perfection over progress, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, just get it out there, get reactions, get feedback, and keep improving. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, thinking back to kind of the four pillars you just shared, it's that trust piece. I was actually on a call with a company, that with the engineering team of a company, that were, the call started as they wanted kind of a presentation or some training on communication skills and
Hmm.
presentation skills. And
Hmm.
as the conversation went along, the key thing that they were talking about really was the problem, was that these new engineers that they were hiring would spend too long kind of heads down working on something without asking for input. They would get to the very end of some kind of development cycle and then go to present it. And there were just kind of like key assumptions that they got wrong, or some kind of question that they didn't ask. And really what we
Hmm.
came back to was there's a lack of trust and kind of an environment where
Yeah.
these new engineers feel comfortable getting feedback and opinions from the more seasoned people early on. And I think
Yeah.
it fits right in with this creative piece that you're talking, the creativity piece, and these
Yeah.
pillars of, as new employees, they don't have that psychological safety. They don't feel
Yeah.
like they can ask these questions early on. And so
Yeah.
it's, they're, I guess, being creative, and they're being kind of messy, but they're kind of trying to bring order to it too early without all the
Yeah.
information that they need.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, and I've got a story, if you want, if it's okay,
Yeah.
of where, from a client of ours, that sort of showed trust. So, like, this is for that was a great example of like what a lack of trust looks like and some of the symptoms. And I think a lot of that's like, it's risky. It's risky to
Hmm.
trust someone. And so this client of ours, like, this was amazing. Like, it's probably our most successful program right now. It's an emerging leader program for kind of senior experienced ICs, and we started it last fall with a pilot. We talked to, and so and it's meant to be for all of their ICs eventually, but they kind of put together a list of like 20, 25 of their like highest potential
Yep.
as the pilot audience, right? So we're going to
Yep.
test it out with them. So we spoke to a section of those people. We indexed like kind of what their problems were, and we built the program based on that. We ran the first session and we got this horrendously low NPS. Like, we just completely missed the mark. And people
Yep.
were like, what is this? It's not relevant to me. Like,
Yep.
um, I mean, I was like just devastated. Like, I hadn't like felt that level of like
Yeah.
failure in a long time, right?
Yeah.
But this client, it's a company called Fair, and Katie's like very vocal about this. She was amazing. She was like, okay, look, first and foremost, like, you guys have to turn this around by the third module, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, there's no ifs or buts. Like, we're not renewing unless you do.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give you those next two sessions to do that, right? So, like,
Yeah.
we went all in to go, like, the messiness, right? We went and talked to, if we did like five, maybe 6 or 7 interviews before, we did like 17 in the next round. We
Yeah.
talked to everyone, and what we realized is we were basically over indexing by going deep with few people, and so it helped to like go
Mm.
broader, and we got like a better understanding of how it fits into their work, and blah blah blah. Long story short, we got to like a 0 NPS for the middle one, and then like a 60 something for the last one. And so we had this like crazy turnaround, and it's because she trusted us, and she
Yeah.
let us do that and go and
Yeah.
like, and then go through the messiness of like of getting it right. And
Yeah.
I think my takeaway from all of this is like, that's how you build a really good program. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't just come out the box perfectly ready and done.
Yeah.
Like, you have to iterate and improve. And I think giving yourself, if you're in the case of someone building these things, or like even just coaching your team, like, give yourself that runway to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, I think it might have been was it your post on LinkedIn this morning that I responded to about survivor bias?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of leaders have, and especially new leaders, right? If you're a new manager, likely you were a high performer as an individual contributor. That's why you
yeah,
became a new manager.
yeah.
And there's all kinds of reasons why somebody is successful early in their career, but very often it's kind of unexplainable. It's kind of just like a meeting of the right personality fell into the right spot, fell into the right organization. It was a
Hmm.
culture fit. The rules worked well for you.
Yeah,
That's not taking anything away from the hard work, but there's very often a bit of serendipity there of a good match.
yeah,
And when there is that good match, sometimes you don't have to be that creative because it just like for some reason it made sense to you, and
yeah,
and you were able to do work well. And so then when you go up higher, get to this new role, there can be a lot of trepidation and worry about messing anything up. And I
yeah.
think that's probably what's the I'm forgetting the rule of you promote to your level of
Yeah,
incompetence.
I think the Peter principle.
The Peter
Is it?
principle, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it's that's it exactly of,
yeah,
you don't lean into this idea of things are messy and we're going to make mistakes, because you haven't had to in the past, and so you just keep doing what you've been doing before. And it's really that ability. It's the ability to take that first round of feedback and embrace it when it's really, really bad.
yeah.
It almost feels like that's one of the keys to
I
um,
totally agree.
being creative.
And it's so hard for us to do this, right? I think
Yeah,
anybody listening, like think back to like when you were a kid, like you were just in, and I have young kids now. I know you do. Like anybody who has young kids as well, listening, like you're in like question mode, curiosity mode,
yeah,
nonstop, right?
yeah,
Then we go to school and we learn that these are the right answers and we're going to have to
yeah,
regurgitate them at the end of the year. And so we spend our whole term or semester or whatever like learning those things, and then we're going to package them up and give them back to the teacher, and we're going to get to go to the next grade. And so we do that through 10, 12 grades, whatever. um, that's the South Africa US reference. I think it's 12 grades, right? And
yeah,
then at
yeah,
the end of that, you go to college and it's the same thing, right? So we
yeah,
all high performing people, actually all people, like I think, who've gone through the school system have that built in now. So now you're
yeah,
programmed to find the answers, not have the questions. And
yeah.
that hits a big wall, right? When you're talking about creativity, because we talk about complex open-ended problems. There are no right answers. So now you're stuck. What the hell are you going to do? You have to have good questions.
I loved that phrase. You're programmed to have the answers, not ask the questions. Because
Yeah.
I remember this was years ago, pretty early on in SpaceX's Starship program, which is launching big rockets now. This is well before they had anything to launch. And I remember there was an interview that Elon had where somebody was asking about progress on it. And he basically said something like, we're confident now that we know which questions to ask,
Mm,
right? They had been working on it, believe it or not. So the Starship is powered by the Raptor engine. It's a new
mm,
engine that's different than what they fly on the Falcon 9. And I
mm,
remember seeing right after I started at SpaceX, the head of vehicle engineering gave a briefing on Raptor, and this would have been back in 2014. So like
okay.
they've been working on this engine. So they've been slowly in the background working on this stuff for a very long time. And a
Mm,
big portion of that work, to your point, was just figuring out what are the key questions that we have to go figure out the answers to.
mm, mm,
Was a huge part of that program. And I think that's
yeah.
something that the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because for
Yeah.
anybody listening to this, so many of the things that are driving us forward right now, or the problems that we need solutions to, like these are the hard problems now.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are very difficult problems of, whether it's supersonic commercial air travel or going to Mars or,
Yeah.
internet constellations of satellites. All these things
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
very difficult problems. And we've kind of, I think, in my opinion, it's like we've kind of tapped out the things that we learned from World War II
Yeah.
and the early
Yeah.
Cold War. It's like we've tapped out all of those
Yeah.
engineering and scientific advances, and we're at
Yeah.
the spot now where we need like dramatically new things,
Yeah.
and it takes creativity and figuring out
Yeah.
what questions to ask.
Yeah. And I'll add into that because that's a really great framing for like the problem space that people
Yeah,
listening are in, right? Like that is also not a solo effort. Like that's there's
yeah,
Andy Grove talks a lot about this in I think Only the Paranoid Survive, and I love this idea of like innovation comes from the edges, and he talks about like the sort of balance between being ivory tower leader and like listening to people that are in the field. And he talks through like the whole microprocessor microchip like story through that lens, and it's so true. Like we're talking about breakthrough thinking here, we're talking about messy problem spaces. Like it's that observation that like a front end or like a front line engineer is spotting, that is cross matched with like some weird
yeah,
like interest that another guy who's like interested in like I don't know composing musical pieces, like like interdisciplinary. And like it's like it's combining all these seemingly very random data points
yeah,
in, and then eventually like, and then that sort of sparks something, and then it's like, oh wait, what if we did that? And to your point, like it's then the questions, they start to flow, and you start to see, oh wait, that kind of applies here. And like, so you can't plan for that. Like you just need, it's messy, like but you need a way. What you can do to make this somewhat practical is you can encourage those kind of conversations.
yeah,
You can encourage a diversity of perspectives. You can
yeah,
talk to more people, right? Like these are all things you can do, and then trust that you know the next steps will emerge, basically.
yeah. To continue down that practicality road, I think, especially since a lot of the audience is individual managers and that kind of thing, a lot of these conversations can sound very big and like cultural for the whole organization.
Yeah,
But, and maybe you can take this in a different direction or relate it back to kind of the four pillars of creativity that you talked about before. Like,
yeah,
what are practical things that I, as an individual manager, if I want to encourage creativity on my team,
yeah,
what are some effective things that I need to be doing?
yeah, yeah. So okay, so I think there's a few different things. I'll kind of talk about one, and then maybe we can talk about it a bit and move on to the next one. I think I've got
Yeah,
like four or five around that.
awesome.
But so the first one I think is normalizing risk. Like it's
Yeah.
so key to build in this fear, this to eradicate the fear of failure, to build in this thing that like you're not expected to have the right answer. Like this is
Hmm.
go back to the problem space thing. It's complex, it's open ended, it's wicked. So you don't have to have the right answer here, but I want your opinion, right? I want
Yep.
your point of view, and like yeah, and sort of creating that safety around that. So I think that's a big first one, just normalizing that for people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think depending on the organization that you're in, that can probably take a lot of different guises. Like I can imagine in the worst organizations, that can mean, and not maybe not even the worst organizations, but like that might involve a deal of protection of your team,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
giving them room to run where you're not necessarily
Yeah.
pushing up every mistake or failure.
Yep,
Uh, and
exactly.
and then
Yep.
I can also imagine that it's a bit of humility and kind of airing your own dirty laundry as the manager.
That I think that's a great point. Like that role modeling that yourself. You don't normalize it unless you normalize it for yourself first.
Yeah,
I totally
yeah,
agree. Yeah. So that's a big one. I think another big one is separating critique, because like once the idea is out there, it does need to be critiqued, right? But separating the critique the from the idea from the person, right? So like
mm,
it's not so like people can feel safe that they're putting this idea out there. I talk a lot about how, I mean, I don't actually talk a lot about this. I think a lot about this from my reading and stuff. Is like ideas don't, you don't like manufacture them. They like come
yeah,
through you in a way,
yeah,
right? Like I really do believe that they exist out there, and then we are like conduits for them, right? And like
yeah,
if you really are listening and paying attention, and the right circumstances line up, you will come up with something that I would have never considered, and that's awesome, right? But
yeah,
it's not a reflection of your identity or your personality. It's an idea, and it should be
yeah,
critiqued as an idea, not as you,
yeah,
right? So I think
yeah.
that's another big one.
That is one, and I think that's actually one of the reasons why I often say that I think engineers in particular can be some of the best managers out there, because your average engineer, honestly, is really good at
Uh,
exactly that. You know, I've seen people have just like heated, yelling at the top of their lungs discussions about some engineering decision or some, some design thing that they're going to do, or some mistake that somebody made, and then they just go have lunch together, and it's totally fine
yeah,
because
yeah.
their brain is able to split of they may not have the best interpersonal skills normally, but like there is a difference between the person and the idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, that's a great culture to spread. And I think so. My third
Yeah.
one, and this is kind of building on that, is encouraging this cross functional problem solving. So
Mm,
if you do happen to manage a cross functional team, this is obviously easier. But if not, like bring in other functions and stuff. But if you've got that engineering mindset, like let's get that to rub off on others, right? So
yeah.
we do a lot of this in our workshops. A lot of them are cross functional, and we'll get them to just spend time learning about each other's perspectives, right? So they can walk out of those things going. Someone on the product team can be going like, "Oh, now I get why the risk team is up my ass about this." Blah blah blah. Like now I see their perspective. So like that's huge. I think just getting people to
Yes.
like understand and it sort of creates this enterprise mindset for people on your team, right? So now they're starting
Yeah.
to see the bigger picture and how things fit together. That's only going to help with creativity.
Yeah, whenever we're delivering workshops, we actually get asked pretty commonly whether or not we should like try to target individual departments at a time, so that kind of
Mm,
everybody that's in the room is used to working together, or solving the same problems. And I'll have some discovery questions about what exactly the problems that they're trying to solve. But almost always I land on, this is an opportunity for people who don't normally meet to meet,
yeah,
and for them to get together, because I think you're right. Um,
learn from each other.
you never know how that's going to pay off.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I completely agree. I think almost all programs like this should be cross-functional
Yeah,
for that reason.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it creates this like network of knowledge as well in a company.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
so that's one. I think another one, and maybe this is the last one. I don't know if maybe I got one more, but this is an interesting one, and like I try to do this now for myself a lot, but kind of blocking off time for open wondering and just thinking.
Mm,
Like going for a long walk in the middle of the day, or just like Don Draper style, lie on the couch for a couple of hours behind you, that kind of thing.
mm-hmm,
Google has that famous thing of like 20%, your 20% of your time
mm-hmm,
thing, and you can like put aside time to go do whatever the hell you want. You're going to still get paid for that time.
mm-hmm.
But I think just for managers thinking, how can I like practically do this with my team to give them a chance to just step away from things a little bit, and like yeah, I don't do it enough, so it's definitely
Yeah.
something I can improve on. But
Yeah, and I can see that as being something really practical, especially in a world where, everybody's using Jira or Monday and everything's on a ticket, and you're just like,
yeah,
there's just such a drive towards efficiency. I mean,
totally.
geez, as we've moved into the world of remote work, the fact that there are, mouse jigglers,
Yeah,
because people know that there's software watching them every
yeah,
second,
exactly, exactly.
um, is a sign that we're probably not
Yeah,
giving people enough
yeah,
space.
yeah.
I don't know why this just popped into my brain, but I remember a few years ago, I had the thought of, what I would love to see what happened if a company like, for some reason, I always used Home Depot as my example.
Hmm.
If Home Depot just taught every single person in the company how to code, right? Like
Yeah,
if the people out on the floor knew how to code, and just like what random
yeah,
things would come out of that, what random amazing solutions would come out of that. And
yeah,
of course, that would probably be seen as a huge waste of time or lack of efficiency, because
yeah,
you're pulling all these people away from their primary duty. But
yeah,
yeah, giving people space, not expecting everybody to be like devoting every moment of the day to their primary
yeah.
duty, is probably really important.
Let's tug on that a little bit because I think let's bring AI into this because I've been
Mm,
having a lot of these kind of conversations, right? Like I think we all know that AI is making us more efficient. We can do more with less and all of that. And as we also all know, and I think there's like a principle for this. Maybe you'll know the name. If we have more time, we fill it with more work, right? Like
yeah, 100%.
we don't like keep that time aside.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if the mindset shift here is to like bring AI on, right, to like go in and carve out more of that time for yourself, but then use it for big picture thinking, for
Mhm.
creativity, for innovation, you know.
Absolutely, and I think because though I think you're 100% right in that AI either is or will be making us more efficient, but so much of that relies on, something as simple as taking the time to actually craft a good prompt,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and
Yeah,
being create that's because that's creative, right?
that
And
is
it's
creative. Yeah.
and there's I was listening to, I think, Ezra Klein talk about doing research for his books
Mm-hmm.
and how he still prints everything off and reads it together himself. And though he could just go to ChatGPT and ask, like, give me a summary of this paper, there's
Mm.
something about the time spent reading it and the connections
Yeah.
in the brain, because though the AI can do a really great job of saying, here's a summary of what you want to know,
Yeah.
it can't say, oh, by the way, like, I see where you're going with this and you're going down the wrong path.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna do that.
It's not going to do that. And you're
Yeah.
going to miss, like, I think the AI summaries are great and everything, but they are like a label for
Yes.
the
Yeah.
real like meaning behind
Yep.
something. And
Yeah.
so, yes, it's a good way to like orientate yourself to the whole concept or whatever you're investigating. But like, there's no substitute for actually reading the source material, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, go to the source, like, figure out like what are the people saying, what's the story behind this stuff, because that's where the meaning is, you know. And so
Yeah.
again, to make this practical, it's like it's kind of what I was saying earlier, like talk to more people, get more perspectives on board, you know, like there's no substitute for doing that.
Yeah. So kind of, especially, kind of summarizing this for the individual manager, like, it sounds like the biggest things are, making sure you're setting this standard that this is okay.
Yeah.
You're making the space, you're normalizing the fact that we're going to be iterative, it's going to be messy, that's okay. And so you're kind of reserving judgment there. You're then, with that being said, really encouraging space and time for people to make connections in their own brain and really think through things in a different way, and then also make connections with other people and
Yeah.
new information so that they
Yeah.
can kind of maximize the stuff that's rolling around in their head during that
Yeah.
time.
And create a shared understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you that was a great summary. And as you were doing that, I was thinking like a good way. One of the best things I think I learned from that Csikszentmihalyi book, and actually like all creativity research, is that creativity is a system. It's not like a trait. You know, no one's like born
Yeah.
creative. Or actually, a better way to
Yeah.
say it is we're all born creative, right? And creativity is a system, and it's a system of finding the right questions to ask. You know, asking those questions, coming up with a hypothesis for a solution because there's no right solution yet. It's just an hypothesis, and then testing it,
Yep.
right? And then getting feedback and testing. And then eventually you get to a right one that fits that problem that you're solving. But that's problem solving as well. That's why I say like
Yeah.
creativity is the ability to solve complex open-ended problems, right?
Yep. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's it's really practical it's really important to think of it that way, because I think we don't
Yeah.
often think of it that way, but it really is true. This has been a
Yeah.
great discussion, Andrew. Tell me, as we close out here, tell me a little bit
Yeah.
more about the work you're doing at Curious Lion and how people can find you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, Matt. Thanks for suggesting this as a topic, and I'm glad that you're working on it as well with your clients. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I do talk about this kind of stuff a lot. I love engaging in conversation about it. And Curious Lion, we're running a lot of workshops around this, focusing on that emerging leader population, and
Yep.
finding ways to build this habit and mindset of problem solving in teams.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, really excited we could have you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. We deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.